Gasp! Alright, what do I play first? Fallout New Vegas? No. Little Big Planet? Boring. Highly acclaimed masterpiece of a game, The Last of Us. Dude, there's nothing to do on this thing. All these games suck.
Hey, kid.
Who said that?
Over here. Your problem isn't that the games suck, it's that you're just not in the mood to twiddle a couple of sticks. And why would you? Video games just aren't worth the effort anymore. It's too much input.
Yeah?
Yeah, listen, all I'm saying is instead of playing a game, why don't you sit down and watch some Super Mario and... What do you think you're doing? Are you sleeping me inside? Let me go. Ow, that hurt. Oh, you can't do this to Super Mario Brothers. You can't do this to Mr. Mario. Hey.
Oh, I'm making another one of these then, huh? Okay, where is my script? There it is! Right, so, I love video games. In fact, my love for video games is honestly on par with that of TV and film. If I could go back and change anything about this show, it'd be to talk about not only video games, but other forms of media as well. But I named this show Film Torture of Me, so I'm f***ed! Thing is, video games are an amazing way to tell a story. Not only can you tell these massive stories you just can't get done in an hour and 40 minutes, but the player can interact with that story. Half-Life, The Last of Us, Firewatch, GTA San Andreas, Night in the Woods, you get the point. And gaming as a medium has gotten really popular recently. With that popularity though comes... well, some businessmen in suits trying to wring as much money out of the necks of these IPs as possible. At some point in a big game franchise's life, there's bound to be some sort of external product to bank off its name. Spin-off mobile games, comics, action figures, and if the series is just unlucky enough, it might get itself a film adaptation. And let me tell you, it is terminal. Once again, open up that history book, because we're going back to the year of our lords, 1971. The gaming industry was starting to pop off. Arcades were getting these giant cabinets where, get this, your customers can play as this little yellow ball eating white dots. Many of these old arcade games are still remembered and played today, whether it be the original game or a ripoff on the App Store. Pong, Pac-Man, Space Invaders, and most importantly, Donkey Kong. A character in that game was a small little man that jumped a lot, and believe it or not, that's the most popular video game character of all time. You don't need to have played a Mario game, that small little man is Mario by the way, to know who this guy is. And even then, you probably have played a Mario game before. I'm pretty sure my grandma has played Mario Kart Wii for f***'s sake. Anyway, game consoles started popping up a lot more around the late 70s, but they wouldn't exactly enter their prime until the third generation of consoles, with the release of... the Intellivision! Oh, and the Nintendo Entertainment System, I guess. Super Mario Bros. For the Nintendo Entertainment System released in 1985, and some people really liked it. Some people. It didn't take that long for Nintendo to start capitalizing off it. The game got a sequel, and then another, and then another, and yeah, this goes on for a while. And the Super Mario Bros. Super Show aired its first episode in 1989. But, Nintendo said, we can go higher, we can go bigger, we can make more money! And so, on May 28th, 1993, Super Mario Bros. Released in theaters. Well, isn't this a good start?
F*** you.
It's pretty fitting that the first big video game film just so happened to be the Mario movie. Not only because it follows the most popular video game characters of all time, but just like most other video game films, it's not very good. Super Mario Bros. Follows Mario, no that's not his canonical name in the games, and his brother Luigi, who isn't actually his brother as Mario raised him up.
Mario here brought me up. He's been my mother my whole life.
65 million years before the events of the film, a meteor
struck the Earth,
splitting the universe into two parallel dimensions. When this girl named Daisy gets kidnapped by King Koopa on the other side of said parallel universe, the Mario brothers have to rescue her and stop Dennis Hopper from merging their dimensions together. To say this film was a mess would be an understatement. The directors were constantly changing things without telling the cast or crew. They were trying to fight back against Disney, who at this point had purchased purchased the rights to the film, and they even shot scenes with strippers and other sexually explicit content. All of said scenes were cut out anyway. The production on this film was so bad that Dennis Hopper, the actor for Bowser, was supposed to only be there for the shoot for 5 weeks. He was there for 17. Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo, the actors for Mario and Luigi respectively, would drink constantly before, after, and in between takes. Bob even suffered injuries while filming, getting stabbed 4 times, breaking his finger, getting electrocuted, and he nearly drowned! Holy shit! And that was just the production. The film itself is decent. Yeah, curveball, I know, but after watching the film a few times, I don't think it's all too bad. It's not good, but it's not outright terrible either. What I love the most is actually the set design. Dino Hatton, the city in the parallel universe, looks pretty great. The neon lights, the busy streets, the layers, the world feels fully lived in and overpopulated. The film has a quality cast, most of which do a fantastic job. Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo are a great duo. Individually, they hold their own, Bob especially, but together, they had some pretty great moments. Maybe they worked so well together because they both had negative feelings towards the film and bonded over them. And they were drunk, that too. The cinematography was alright. And that's all the good I can think of. Now on to why this film sucks. The story is bad. Really bad. The fact that the plot is literally based off a what-if statement is pretty telling about how much thought was put into the story, or lack thereof. Its premise barely makes any sense either. If the asteroid created a parallel universe and trapped the dinosaurs in said universe, why do they all look human? They evolved, yeah, but tell me, what do a monkey and a T-Rex have in common? Aside from all the basic features most creatures have. Not much, right? Okay, so why do all of these people look exactly the same as humans do? Dinosaurs didn't have skin, they had fucking scales! That's not just it either. If it's a parallel universe and the world is supposed to be like our own, why is everywhere but Dino Hatton a desert? What's the history of the world? Why won't the film tell us? Listen, you can have some great cinematography, the best score, some amazing actors, but if you tell a crap story, then your film will most likely end up as a mess. And the fact of the matter is, Super Mario Bros. Was trying to have its cake and eat it too. It was trying to tell a story that's related to the original games, but they also wanted to tell this badass adventure with adult themes while keeping its PG rating. And while I feel the film did a better job than most people give it credit for, it's still a complete mess. Which sucks, because a lot of the crew, at least at the beginning, really wanted to make this film great. One of the writers for the film made a ton of these sketches on how items in the game would translate over to the story they were telling. And some of these designs are really creative. So it sucks that only a few of these were ever used, and the ones that were used were incredibly underwhelming. The Bob-omb is the best example I can think of, but even then, it's just used for the climax scene. It's also sponsored by Reebok? What? The mushroom plays a prominent role in the film, with Daisy's dad being a bunch of fungus. Weird way of implementing the mushrooms, but okay. Since the actors obviously can't jump like the original Mario characters can, the replacement are these boots that make you jump really high. But they're used only a handful of times and aren't really worth mentioning. And then, that's it. So many more of these unique ideas were made, but barely any of them were implemented. The writing isn't good, the world building isn't good, and the story just is not good. But let's give Super Mario Bros. Credit where it's due. For the first ever video game film, it could have been a lot worse, and some of the crew have even said that, in a way, they're proud of it. John Leguizamo especially, going on to say that for the first proper film adaptation of a video game, he feels it wasn't half bad. Bob Hoskins, however, painted this film as his biggest regret all the way up to his death in 2014, and honestly, I don't blame him. The film has since gained a weird cult status, and admittedly, a part of me gets it. While this film was not good, it does have its charms, and I got a bit of enjoyment out of the weird parts. Some parts of this film are crazy, like Yoshi getting stabbed in the neck. Oh my god! Regardless of all the positives I have, this film is still not good, and from there, it went even more downhill. There's this Wikipedia page with each and every single video game film made for a theatrical release, and out of all of these films, only 11 have a rating over 50% on Rotten Tomatoes. Yes, I'm British. The fact that out of most of these films, the Mario movie is a highlight says a lot. The question is, what makes these films so bad? Two things in my opinion: story and presentation. As I said before, if you have a bad story, you probably won't have a good film. Illumination has pretty great animation, but God knows how much their filmography is despised. And I'm sorry, but many of the films on this list just have stories. I don't know what witch is cursing these directors and writers whenever they decide to turn a video game into a film, but the fact that Detective Pikachu is the first on the list where the reaction was, "It's not all bad," says a lot. How did it take us over 20 years to finally make a video game film with a script that didn't make you want to cough up blood? I don't know, but as of recent, it seems like better, or at least decent writers, are contributing to these films. The other big thing is presentation. Super Mario Bros. Has some decent presentation, but I have a question for you. Why does this have to take place in the real world? Mario is a cartoony Italian plumber who says "Woohoo!" And since Mario Odyssey came out, we were reassured that he's not exactly your typical Homo sapien. How realistic is this character? He's not. Mario is a cartoon, so why the hell are we forcing him into our own world? I'm not saying every single video game film should be animated, and films like this can and have worked. The Pokemon in Detective Pikachu genuinely look pretty great, although they do look a bit out of place at times. But if the source material you're adapting from is more cartoony, why would you go down any other avenue? This doesn't just apply to games either. I remember watching the Fairly Odd Parents movie as a kid and wondering why it wasn't animated and also why Cosmo and Wanda looked like that. Stop looking at me. I can't supply a direct answer, sadly, but with how companies have been treating animation recently, I get the feeling it's either because they just don't feel like it's a worthwhile medium, they don't want to take a chance and feel like taking this realistic route is safer, or because of money. And to be fair, many of these films on this list wouldn't fit an animated medium, but those films have their own issues with their presentation. I just used the cartoon reason as the most obvious example of either poor or misused presentation. Luckily, it's something that recent films have been fixing. Quality video game films have been coming out more recently from 2019 onwards, and while none are exactly perfect, they're getting pretty close. The best example I could think of has got to be Uncharted starring Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg. What a crazy cast! Oh my god! Okay, but in all seriousness, Angry Birds 2, Detective Pikachu, and especially Sonic the Hedgehog are all recent films that have gained a lot of praise, and I think quite a bit of it is deserved. Sonic the Hedgehog still isn't a great film, sadly, but considering it's yet another family film taking place in the real world when the animated version is sitting right next to it, and would probably suit the character better, as a CGI anthropomorphic animal teaming up with James Marsden, has very little of a connection to the games themselves, doesn't even understand what Sonic is and that his speed isn't a power, fails to connect to its youth audience, has cheap jokes, and has the most basic plot they could have possibly gone with, I think it's good. Sonic the Hedgehog follows this blue fucker 10 years after being run out of his original dimension. On Earth, he's bored and alone, with the only friend he has being Donut Lord, someone who doesn't even know he exists. Out of his frustration, he causes a power outage across the country, getting the attention of the entire US government. And so, they order in Dr. Robotnik to find the source, and eventually begin chasing down both Sonic and the now actual friend Tom down to get to the source of Sonic's power. And then the rest of the film happens. Right off the bat, I want to quickly talk about the presentation side of things. I'm admittedly still not too happy about it, but just like Detective Pikachu, I think the CGI looks pretty good. It's not as good as that movie, but Sonic is really expressive, the effects coming off him look great, and generally speaking, he's animated really well. He interacts with the world in a believable way, but again, it's not perfect. Everyone pointed this out when they saw it too, but any item Sonic is holding just kind of floats there. The rubber balls especially look kind of out of place. And while while it's obviously not going to be realistic, I never look at Sonic and think that he's a part of the world. I look at him and I feel like his animations were just placed over real footage, which it is, essentially, but other movies like Detective Pikachu do this better, at least in my opinion. What Sonic does have over Detective Pikachu is its script. Detective Pikachu, it wasn't all bad, it just wasn't anything special either. Some of the jokes were good, the story was pretty straightforward until the third act, which was probably the intention considering its target demographic, and all around, it's just nothing special. And while I could say the same for the Sonic movie, I do think it has a bit more to it. Sonic and Tom have a really nice friendship. Their interactions are fun, they both have their own flaws that are worked through, and they both had some nice character development. I especially loved their interactions at the bar and in the motel. The two are still fairly basic at the end of the day, but for what they're there for, they do a good job. Their acting leaves a bit to be desired, but I love Ben Schwartz's energy for Sonic, and James Marsden does a job. I wouldn't say it's bad, but the fact that I can barely remember his performance isn't helped that, while his character is good, is also very forgettable. He also has the most basic face I've ever seen in my entire life, I'm sorry. Obviously though, Jim Carrey stole the show, but since I don't really want to give an anti-vaccine advocate the spotlight, I'm going to speed through my compliments for him. Jim Carrey's version of Dr. Robotnik is the usual silly character we've grown to love with a much weirder and at time more serious turn. He is the most memorable part of the film bar none, and the fact that his acting was better in 5 other films he played a major role in proves either how good his acting is or how bland the other cast's acting is. But regardless, it sucks that we've lost another genuinely creative celebrity to the NFT pit. Hope that investment was worth it. It probably wasn't. The other supporting cast do a fine job. Even Lima, I'm too white for this shit. He felt more like a foil to the shimmering gold statue of Dr. Robotnik than his own character, though I do still like their interactions. The cast for Sonic 2 is a lot more interesting. Before I even watched the film, hearing Idris Elba as Knuckles sent shivers down my spine. And thank you, whatever executive decided to let her reprise her role from the games, because Colin, oh fuck that, voices Tails in both the games and the film, which I was not expecting. Big films like this usually shoot the original voice actors in the head in order to get some big names on the poster. Take Scoob, for example. Multiple cast members were upset that they didn't get to reprise their roles for the new film. Frank Welker especially, which he absolutely deserved that role because he has been voicing Fred since the original show in 1969. I can't imagine how hard it must have been for the guy, to be honest. Not being allowed to voice a character you've been acting as for half your life because the execs making the movie wanted Zac Efron, are you kidding? To be on the poster would be heartbreaking. Especially if it was Zac Efron! Case in point, it's nice that Colleen got to stick around as Tails. And to be fair on the new voice actors, I don't think Roger Craig Smith or Travis Willingham would really work with the new designs. I guess Tails just wouldn't fit anyone else, huh? Wow, I spent a lot of time just talking about the acting. All in all, the Sonic movie is genuinely pretty good, as is its sequel. It's still pretty safe, not taking any big risks, but it's still a well-made and enjoyable experience that, of course, I had fun with. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is the highest rated film on this list, with a 69% on Rotten Tomatoes. Nice. And it's arguably got the warmest reception of any video game film out there. Is what I would say if I was lying to you. There is one more film with a higher rating than Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and that's the 2021 film Werewolves Within. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, huh? Because up to this point, I had never even heard of this game. As it turns out, nobody else did either. Werewolves Within is a 2016 social deduction multiplayer VR game developed by Red Storm Entertainment and published by Ubisoft. You play as a town member, among other town members, trying to figure out who is secretly a werewolf, of which will kill a town member every night. So, it's Town of Salem, but in VR. The weirdest thing is no one really knew about this game, and I bet people still didn't after watching it. But I did, and it's weird. I'm not going to do a full review on it, I don't want to bog the video down more than I already have, but it is worth at least a quick mention. Despite being labeled a horror, I wouldn't exactly say that it's scary, but at the same time, I don't think that was really its intent, instead focusing on the main characters and the comedy. The two main characters, this ranger named Finn and this post person named Cecily, are a hilarious duo. Some of their dialogue was a bit off every now and again, but the rest of the dialogue, plus the great acting and timing from both, made me enjoy just watching them talk. You know at least one person has done a good job if they can manage to do that. My biggest problem is the pacing. The first act is done pretty well, my biggest complaint being how long it took to get to the first anything. And even when it does, it comes out of basically nowhere. The second act is when all the characters spend a lot of time doing nothing. Just talking and getting mad and accusing each other of random shit, which... okay, at least it's accurate to its source material. By the final act, the story is now trying to kill off as many characters as possible while wrapping up the final confrontation. The film ends when a character comes out of nowhere, shoots the werewolf with a crossbow, says a cool one-liner, and then it cuts to credits. What the fuck? It's a good script, but the last act completely lost me. On top of that, this genre, werewolves or some sort of other thing picking off characters one by one as they scramble to find out who it is. Yeah, you don't need a game to adapt from for that. Werewolves Within barely takes anything from the game it originally came from, aside from the whole werewolf hunting people thing. If it weren't for the fact that Ubisoft in the film's advertising outright stated that it was a direct adaptation of the game, there wouldn't be anything here to tell me what the source material was. When I say that this is a video game film, that comes with a massive asterisk to say that it basically isn't. And in terms of quality, it is genuinely pretty great, but we aren't there just yet. There's a few reasons I wanted to make this video, but one of the biggest is that I've always dreamed about some of my favorite game franchises being turned into fun, memorable film or TV show experiences. A part of me is still holding out for that TF2 TV show. I know it won't happen, but I really want it. Admittedly though, the more I got into film, the less I wanted them to happen, as I feel like a game is at its strongest when it's giving you the control. Not to say I don't enjoy some of these films, for fuck's sake, a part of me enjoyed the Mario movie. God knows there's going to be a few video game adaptations out there I'll genuinely enjoy. But it doesn't help when most of these films just aren't good. If anything, when a new film based off a game is announced, I get more worried than excited, so it's nice that recently I've been a bit more positive towards them. But we aren't there yet. Werewolves Within was good, but it is nowhere near perfect. Luckily, I know a short film that gets pretty close. Papers, Please is a puzzle indie game created by Lucas Pope, where you play as an immigration officer at the border of a fictional Eastern Bloc-like country. Your job is to make sure the people trying to come through the border are who they say they are and are there for what they say they're there for. I hadn't actually played it until researching for this video, sadly. I had watched gameplay around 2017 but never got around to it myself. Regardless, around 2 years back, I was bored and looking for something to watch on YouTube. Animated indie pilots, video essays, and in this instance, short films. Papers, Please by Nikita Ordinsky, hope I said that right, is a 2018 short film about an immigration officer at the border of a fictional Eastern Bloc-like country. His job is to make sure the people, okay, so who you play as in the game as a character, basically. And fuck, dude, this film is amazing. The shots are tight, the lighting is the perfect mood setter, the soundtrack fits like a glove, the acting, oh my god, the acting! One of the things I love most about the film is the visual storytelling, and if you watch the last video, you'll know why. In the game, there's another force that's controlling the player's actions, your family. Not only is it your job to make enough money to get yourself through the day, but it's to keep your family well fed, warm, and healthy as well. In the film, the inspector is a family man, and we can tell from the not-so-subtle picture he has in front of him at all times, but also the much more subtle reactions he has when people he's researching talk about their families. How they're dead, how they haven't seen them for a long time, how their family may be affected if they don't get through the border. The first real character we meet apart from the inspector is this lone officer, waiting for someone named Alyssa. When we do see Alyssa though, her documents just don't pass. And thanks to the incredible acting of Igor Zav, Denying her entry is something he clearly feels incredibly terrible for. After she leaves, he looks like he's about to cry for f***'s sake. He has to take a deep breath before getting to the next person. What an amazing actor! Papers, Please, both the game and the short film are amazing, and the latter is a great example of a video game adaptation done right. However, this film is only 10 minutes long, and while that's honestly perfect for a film based off Papers, Please, it's also not as difficult to make compared to a full hour and 30 minutes of your typical theatrical release. The fact that it doesn't overstay its welcome may contribute to how great this thing is. I wanted to talk about this film though because it proves that with the right minds behind it, there can be amazing video game films, and while I don't know if Papers, Please is the right game to make a full feature out of, there are plenty of others out there. But the right game is only a part of the problem. The other is the people making it. I'm not saying all of these directors are bad and don't know what they're doing. What I'm saying is that most of these films just weren't good because of the people directing them making the wrong decisions. But especially recently, directors have been shown to make the right ones. All we need now is for the stars to align, and maybe, just maybe, we'll get a video game film that's at least as good as The Mask.